Well, hello. Welcome to Storytime Tuesdays. This week, we're going to have a story about crazy neighbors. Okay, so I did a video about my horrible, poor excuse of a landlord. If you haven't seen that, there will be a link somewhere. So I figure let's just kind of keep on a roll of crazy stuff that goes on where I live, and I'll tell you some crazy stories about some of my neighbors. Okay, so the first story I'm going to tell you, these people no longer live in the same tenement house as me, thank goodness, and they were finally evicted prior to my current landlord purchasing this building. Okay, so we're going to call this neighbor, we'll call him Frank. And Frank had an apartment in the same building as me. I live on the first floor in the back half of the building, and Frank's apartment was on the first floor in the front half of the building. And in Frank's apartment, it was him, his two children, and his girlfriend. We're gonna call his son Trash, and we're gonna call his daughter Stupid, and we're gonna call his girlfriend Inappropriate for her age. These are accurate descriptions of these people. Frank worked relatively long days, Monday through Friday, I think it was, maybe Saturdays, I don't know. Not really something I care about. So in his apartment during the day, it was Trash, Stupid, and Inappropriate for her age. Now, Inappropriate for her age was minimum in her mid-40s. And then Frank's two children, one of them was in her 20s, and his son was in his late teens. So, the apartment I live in, my husband had been renting it when I met him, and I just moved in to his apartment. It's not like we together went and rented a new place. To start things off on a great note, I called to get cable and internet service set up for the apartment, because my husband didn't have it because he's not home enough to really care. So I set it up. I had to take time out of work to be home so that I could get this stuff all, installed and whatever. Now, we're used to people calling and being like, hey, where on earth is your apartment? Because there's this apartment in the building. Or where exactly is it located? Because we're here on the first floor and there's only one apartment and it's not yours. We're used to that happening. And it's not a surprise because, like I said, this, Frank and his family had the front half of the building, and my husband and I have the back half of the building. So in order to get to our apartment, you actually have to walk all the way into the backyard. And so this is not like a big surprise that they had a difficult time finding the apartment. The tech guy they sent out to do this went to Frank's apartment, knocks on the door, asks if that's the correct apartment. They tell him no. He says, well, can you tell me where this apartment is? Stupid turns around and tells him, there is no apartment by that number on this property. Now, she had lived there for close to 10 years. How do you not know there's another first floor apartment in the back of the building? At the time, there was laundry stuff in the basement, and the only entrance to the basement was right outside my apartment door. So she knew full well there was an apartment back here. She tells him there's no apartment here by that number, so the guy leaves. I get a call, like one of those automated things saying like, oh, hey, we missed you. Can you call us back? So I call him back and I'm like, what are you talking about? You missed me. I'm home. Nobody's come to my door. I'm like, I didn't get any calls like, oh, hey, we're here or nothing. I'm like, all I got was a phone call saying we missed you. And I'm like, this is really weird because I'm sitting at home waiting for you guys. And they're like, oh, well, we see a note from our tech that you gave us the wrong address. And I'm like, okay, well, what address do you guys have on file? Because maybe I mistyped something. And they read it back to me, and I'm like, no, that's exactly where I am. I'm sitting there right now. I've been here for hours waiting. Because you know how they give you those windows. It wasn't that they were really late or anything. They were in the window they gave. And I'm like, I've been sitting here waiting for your tech to show up. And she's like, well, according to our tech, again, I can look in the notes, and I guess he spoke to one of your neighbors, and they said that apartment doesn't exist. And I'm like, well, if it doesn't exist, how am I in it? And they were like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to have to set it up to have another tech come out. And I'm like, okay, great. I just had to take time out of work to deal with that. And now I'm gonna have to contact my work and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to rearrange my schedule again next week just so I can get this done because my neighbor's a moron. Okay, so this is really starting off on a good foot. And this is like after I had been living there for about 2 months already. So then I start noticing that Frank's son, Trash, hangs out on the back porch an awful lot. Like, for no reason at weird times of the day. I'd get it if he was like, you know, just waiting for the washing machine to finish up or something like that, but that's not what was happening. It was like him and his buddies would just all hang out on the back porch. They have no business back there, at all. And then I start hearing that this kid is a well-known thief in the whole neighborhood. So the last thing I want is him hanging out right outside my apartment doors, because it's like porch, hallway, my apartment door. That's the last thing I want. So this is making me very uncomfortable. And, you know, there's nothing I can do about him and his friends hanging out on the back porch. It's just very weird because they have no business back there. And it made me a little uncomfortable after hearing from a lot of people that this kid is a very well-known thief from, like, the entire neighborhood. But, whatever, I can't do anything, it's just annoying. They had a dog. I feel so bad for this poor dog. They would lock that dog in the bathroom all day and just let it bark. And bark. And bark. And bark. And bark. And I knew for a fact there was somebody home. Because I would get it, like, okay, you locked your dog in the bathroom, you guys aren't home, and, like, there's nothing you can do about the dog barking if you're not there, because you're not aware it's happening. But I could hear them talking in the apartment. I would see them outside. And this dog is just locked in their bathroom, barking and barking and barking. And when I say that like, it was barking for a long period of time, I mean, one day it barked for 3 hours, another day it barked for 6 hours, and this was normal. Like, they would do this all the time. But keep in mind, you've got a woman that is clearly over 40, a girl in her 20s, and a teenager. Between those three, one of them should have been able to at least take this dog outside to go to the bathroom. You know, figure out why the dog is barking. If you're gonna lock it in the bathroom all day for no reason, you should not have a dog. So I used to call and file noise complaints on them because, I'm sorry, I get a dog that's gonna bark occasionally, but for hours on end. That's insane. I used to call the cops all the time and be like, can you send somebody down here? And stuff. And the cops would show up and they'd hear the dog barking. They refused to answer their door. And I started telling the cops, like, straight up, I'm like, I know for a fact there's somebody in there. I can hear them talking. Because our walls aren't exactly the, you know, thickest walls in the world. So I started telling the cops, like, look, I know there's somebody there. They're probably not going to answer the door, though. And it was real funny the day the cops were down here for, I don't know what, because I'm not the one that called. But they were down here for something. And their dog had been barking. And the cops had been down here for a while doing whatever it was they had to do. And it's just barking the entire time the cops are here. So the cops knock on their door. They don't answer the door. Like 20 minutes go by and one of them comes waltzing out of the apartment and the cop is still here. They ended up getting fined because of this too. Now, I wish I could say this is where this kind of stops, that it's just a long list of annoyance type things, but it's not. It gets so much worse. So I ended up switching jobs, and so of course I have a new assistant manager, and I worked at a different location than her, but she would come up in the mornings to grab like the reports and stuff out of the computer from the day before to do all the paperwork. So while she was there, her and I used to chit-chat here and there, and sometimes she would bring me my paycheck, which was awesome. Not that I minded having to go to a different location to pick it up, but it was nice that she would, you know, be like, oh, the paychecks came in early, I saw yours, I, you know, brought it out to you, and stuff. I loved it. I thought it was very thoughtful and very sweet of her to do. So one day she noticed my address, and she just happens to have a friend that lives on the same street as me, and she looks at me and she goes, what is up with your street? And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, I've got a friend who lives there, and she said the cops are down there all the time. And I'm like, yeah, they're down here a lot. And she goes, why? And I'm like, well, I can tell you why they're at my building an awful lot. She said, I can't tell you about the rest of the street. And I started telling her about this apartment. And she goes, wait a minute, does that teenage boy look like, and then she listed a nice description of him, and I'm like, oh my god, yes. And I'm like, please tell me that your friend isn't on friendly terms with these people. And she goes, no, that kid tried to steal her car. And I was like, oh my god, I knew this kid was a thief, but I didn't think he'd be that stupid to try and steal somebody's car. You know, some more time goes on, and they get crazier and crazier. Like, they're now hanging out, the teenage kid is now hanging out on the back porch, and the rest of them have, like, all the hoodlums from the neighborhood hanging out on the front porch. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, well, this is unbelievable. And these are, like, kids that everybody knows in the neighborhood are generally up to no good. Then my husband's friend ended up moving in. He moved in up on the 3rd floor with his girlfriend. And then the girl decided she was gonna go and make super buddies with Frank and all his family. Remember I said I wish that was where all the craziness stopped? It's about to get real crazy. So the girl that moved in on the 3rd floor, she was in her late 20s. And like I said, Frank's kid, Trash, was a teenager. She started spending a ridiculous amount of time in that apartment. And we knew what the layout of that apartment was. And we knew that this kid's bedroom was right up against our spare room. And I had said to my husband, I said, you know, she's there all the time. And I find it a little bit weird that, you know, her boyfriend's at work all day. She refuses to work. And she's down there all day with this teenage boy. Because I'm like, I see her with him more than anybody else out of that apartment. Like, I find this a little bit weird. A few weeks after I said that, I started hearing this rhythmic banging up against the wall where his bedroom is. So again, I said, you know, I find this really weird. I talked to my husband, I'm like, I'm not trying to stick my nose in the middle of their relationship, but tell me I'm not crazy. This is starting to look like she's sleeping with this kid. And he goes, nah, she wouldn't be that stupid. And I'm like, oh, you'd be surprised how dumb people can be. About 3 days after I said this to my husband, his friend comes by and tells us that she had been cheating on him. And I just looked over at my husband, didn't say a word, and he goes, yeah, so I kicked her out. And we were like, yeah, we heard the screaming last night, we kind of assumed something was up. And we go, do you know who she was cheating on you with, or she just came out and told you that she's been cheating on you? And he goes, oh no, I caught her red-handed with Frank's son, Trash. I wanted to look at my husband so bad and be like, I told you. But that would have been awful to do. So, you know, let him vent and stuff. And he leaves, and I look at my husband and I said, I told you I thought that was happening. And he goes, I can't believe it really was. He goes, I've known both of them since we were kids. I did not think this chick would ever turn around and pull something like that. And I was like, I told you people can surprise you how stupid they'll be. So she moves into this apartment. And it just becomes awful having her on the property, and then plus the craziness that these people are doing. More and more of like the neighborhood troublemaking teenagers are hanging around this property. And we talked to our landlord that we had at the time. We were like, look, they're always in the back, on the back porch, and it kind of makes us uncomfortable since they really don't have a reason to be back there, and they're just hanging out there. And we're like, on top of that, you come home and there's like already 10 to 15 people hanging out on the front porch, and sometimes there's not even anybody that lives here with them. So our landlord was like, what? He was like, dude, that's not okay. He's like, there shouldn't be people on this property that don't even live here just hanging out. And we were like, yes, this is why we're talking to you, because it's kind of awkward. It's making us a bit uncomfortable. So our landlord says, all right, give me a call whenever this happens, because he only lived like 15 minutes away. And he's like, I'll swing by and I'll shut it down. And it wasn't that effective. So one day, Trash and his girlfriend and about 15 to 20 people were hanging out in the backyard. And they were making a ruckus, but it's the middle of the day, so whatever. You know, that's the downside to living on a first floor. You're gonna have to deal with that. And my husband left to go do something really quick. And while he's gone, I can hear this girl going on and on and on about my husband. Like, riling up these teenagers and whatnot. So, you've got a bunch of troublemaking teenagers. What do you think happens when my husband comes home? Trash and his friends decided to jump him. I can hear screaming and yelling outside, and I'm like, what? And it sounds like a fight. So I'm like, what is going on? So I go and I peek out my window and I see my husband on the floor getting kicked. So we always have like towing stuff hanging around our house. We just happen to have a large set of J-hooks in our house. I will put a picture over here in case you don't know what J-hooks are. It's, you know, they're big, they're heavy, and it's solid metal. So there's a lot of them out there. I'm not about to go out there unarmed. So I go out there with these things and I start yelling at them to back off or I'm gonna start bashing skulls. So of course, you know, a bunch of teenagers, they bolt. And I know who stirred all this up. I know why it got stirred up. It was because Trash and his new girlfriend were angry at her ex and they knew that my husband was friends with him. So they decided, okay, let's have fun. I turn around and I call the cops. Because this is ridiculous. Like, easily 15 people ganged up on my husband. And I'm like, I know that they're all on this property because of Trash. I'm fully aware of this. So I call the cops. The cops come down. I witnessed this. They would not talk to me at all. I don't know if I've mentioned this in previous videos, but the cops where I live, they don't do their job at all, okay? And my husband's like, no, dude, seriously, like, I know this kid was involved and he lives in this apartment. And they're like, oh, we don't doubt that. We are fully aware of, you know, the kind of stuff that kid does. And I'm sitting there like, there was more. I can give you descriptions. And on top of that, remember that, Roommate from Hell video I did? They just happened to have been coming back home because they were living with us when that happened. They just happened to be coming back home and catch all these kids taken off the property and saw exactly where they went to. They tried telling the cops where to go find all these kids. The cops are like, no, it's okay, we'll find them on our own. So clearly this went nowhere fast. But we called our landlord and we were like, look, this is what just went down. And he was like, all right, I'm gonna have to do something about this because this is out of hand now. And we're like, yeah, you think? Shortly after this happened, we were having issues with getting our mail delivered. So the first thing I did was I asked a couple of my neighbors, like, hey, have you guys had an issue getting your mail? Because like I'm thinking like, oh, it's just the post office not doing their job very well. So I asked around. 2 separate apartments tell me they've seen inappropriate for your age fishing through everybody's mailboxes. Are you kidding me? You're going through people's mail. That's why. And it wasn't like they were taking anything that they could do something with. They were taking people's utility bills. And like, what are you gonna do with my utility bill? You're gonna pay it for me? Great, fantastic. You're not gonna pay it for me? Guess what? I can just go online and deal with that anyway. But nobody could catch, like, video evidence of this. I do have a story about how she was not the only one stealing mail, though, and I'll make another video about that. This whole time, Frank knows all the stuff that's going on because he's getting spoken to by our landlord. And told, like, look, you need to wrangle all these people under control. My husband and I told our landlord, if you don't do something about them, 1, we're gonna go find somewhere else to live. And good luck trying to rent out that apartment because of the fact that a lot of people are aware that this kid is doing all of these kinds of things. So he said, okay, I'm gonna let them know that if they can't get this under control, then I'm going to evict them. I don't know what happened, but it wasn't all that long after that. They ended up getting served with eviction paperwork from what I heard. I know they did get evicted though. When you get evicted, you get like a notice like, okay, hey, you gotta get out of the apartment kind of thing from your landlord. Then they can take you to court if you don't leave. And then the courts can decide whether or not you actually have to leave. And the courts did decide, look, you guys do have to vacate this property. And they gave them blah, blah, blah amount of time. If you refuse to vacate the property, the cops come down and take you off the property by force. This is how I know for a fact they got evicted. They were dragged off the property and told they were not allowed back. And that was what it took to get rid of them. Is like they were physically removed. I'm not talking like a cop came down and were like, you guys gotta leave the property, and they left willingly. No, one of them was dragged across the street kicking and screaming. So that's the story about that nightmare neighbor. I hope I never have to deal with a neighbor that is that bad ever again in my life. I hope nobody has to deal with a neighbor that bad in their life. I got 2 more stories about bad neighbors. One of them might take a while to get up because if they overhear me talking, it puts my safety at risk. So that one might come up a while later. It will probably not come up until after I have found a new place to live. So you're gonna have to hang tight for that one. But I will see you next week with a new story on Tuesday. If you watch my other videos, I will see you probably late Saturday night, Sunday morning. Usually I upload somewhere around there. Don't forget to clickety-clack that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my newest videos. I will see you guys later. Bye!